Hi, everybody. I hope y'all are doing well. I hope y'all are having a great day today. If you're new here, I want to welcome you to School of Scarlet, where we talk about the power of unconditional love. So, if that sounds good to you, I invite you to stick around for this video and subscribe if you like this channel. And for my returning subscribers and viewers, thank you so much for tuning back. Today, we will be back on play, and we will be talking about play and movement. So I've started a series about play, and there's already a couple videos out on that previous to this. And I took a little detour to talk about authenticity just based on the needs of my viewers and some of the questions that I was getting. So I'm back on track now. We're going to be talking about life is nothing but play because it really is. When everything else falls away, when all of these things and programming and all of this stuff that has been added on to us falls away, what's left is this childlike, playful nature. And that still remains. And whether you're young in age or old in age, you still maintain this playful urge in nature to want to be playful. So I've made, like I said, two other videos previous to this in this series. If you'd like to go back and watch those, I'd encourage you to go back. There was kind of like a little chit chat about play and kind of my decisions about life through play. And then I've also talked about my experience of play in the classroom. So some of that will be tying in today. And so I'll be sharing a little bit about how, excuse me, how play has kind of come around with movement, even in the classroom, but also in my personal life and also in my life as a parent, because play and movement is something that is very natural for children. So we'll be revisiting that a lot, but it is continuing to happen as an adult as well. It's just that sometimes we repress or we don't allow enough time for play for that to just naturally, occur and unfold for us. So we'll be discussing that topic today. And so let's start from the very beginning. We're born as babies into this world. And, I can remember back to when my daughter was a baby, and some of the first things that, were really fun and playful between us were play. So if you can remember back to when, if you had a child or a niece, nephew, or, child's friend or something like that, when they're very little, they're just learning to move, they're learning movement. So you spend a lot of time with them on tummy time, of rolling them around, helping them do like little somersaults, just rolling back and forth, side to side, kind of moving their legs. So one of the first things that I did with my daughter to like really bond with her outside of, normal, feeding and that sort of thing was to do movement. So one of the things I did was baby yoga, and I did baby massage and things like that. And it was very fun because whenever I would do her legs and we would do the baby yoga together, she would just laugh. And maybe it was a sensation of her legs moving, but she, like, those giggles that babies let out and they just laugh and laugh. That was the kind of laughter I would get from her with baby yoga. So it was something that we really enjoyed doing together. And so later, as she got older and things like that, I would notice, with her father and other people, one of the first things that, is really fun with babies is just tickling them, watching them laugh and move. And as you do that, they move around more and wiggle and they laugh. And so this is just the play of life and how it all occurs. And it starts very early on, even before language, we are playing and we're playing peekaboo. You can even, I can even remember my daughter before she could even say any words at all or anything like that. I'd cover my eyes and go like that, or cover her eyes, and the whole play of peekaboo and all of that. So all of those are like hand plays, finger plays. Those are just, these are plays that children engage in even before they even have a language. So we don't really need language in order to play and have movement. So that's just something, to keep in mind of how inherent play really is to our nature and how we're just playful. And, if we look back and we just look at, animals and their way of being, animals, may not have some of the higher faculties like intuition or, some of the things that we have, this divine connection where, we can realize certain things. Maybe they're not realizing that, but they certainly are in play and they certainly are connected with us, in that play. So we can recognize ourselves in their play, and the way that they play is very similar to the way that we play. And we can play with them, which really can connect us more with them. So, I can go outside and play with my dog, and he gets so happy when I go out there and play with him. I can give my little dog belly rubs, and she loves that. And we can throw the sock back and forth, and she goes after and plays. And, all of this bonds us and grows us closer together. Same thing with children. When we're raising our children as babies and, later on as children and even as teenagers and young adults, play is something that continues to unite and connect us. And we really can't separate from play. If we do, kind of that relationship, if you notice, begins to kind of die. It begins to get kind of boring and stale, and to the point where kind of there's no more of that connection or even desire to really want to be in the same spaces together. So we really have to spend time trying to cultivate play and be in play. Even within relationships, especially within romantic relationships, it's very important. So, we're talking about play and movement. So, we talked about some little basic kind of play that happens between babies and, adults, or, babies themselves and some animals and things like that. So, we see play occurring at the very basic levels of life. But then we see it really flourish in childhood. And really, these children that are playing, that is their work. And anytime that they have a chance that they're playing, so they're always wiggling, they're always jiggling, they're always jumping up and down, skipping down the halls. It's an endless amount of movement and energy, from children. So it kind of begins to explode at that time. And that's a bit of excessive amount of play, but it is completely natural. And it is the way that we develop. And so anyhow, so we'll see that with children around that age, and I can remember being that age. And so I remember being at school, and I remember being a teacher as well. And one of the things about being at school is that it's really, something that's kind of learned and kind of taught as a teacher to the children, how to sit still, how to be patient, how to, work quietly and things like that in your own space without touching others, without getting up. So this is not something that's really actually natural to us. It's something that's learned, and we have to learn by going to school, by learning from our parents, by really, being kind of almost pressured into doing this. And so we do this, and we are able to focus a little bit more and learn, but in turn, there is this kind of like antsiness in us that wants to get up, that wants to move. As if you notice in the classroom, or if you remember back to being a child, as soon as one person asks to go to the restroom, they all ask. Everybody actually wants to get up and move. But, we learn to stay in our seat. We learn to do these things. And sometimes it's quite difficult for some people to do that. And so it becomes very, very difficult. And so one of the things that's really looked forward to in school is recess. So for me, going to school, I actually could sit down. It wasn't such a big problem for me. I definitely preferred to go outside and play, but it wasn't that hard for me to sit down. Excuse me, I got something in my throat. So anyhow, so it wasn't that hard for me to do that, but even then, I was still very much wanting to go and play outside. So I was really just in my head, just waiting for it to be recess and lunchtime. And when that time came around, I loved it. I ran outside, I played. Whether or not I was playing with friends or by myself, it really didn't matter. It was a time that I got to kind of just be free and move. And I would climb trees. I would go look for rocks. There was some bars that I would do like little flips and somersaults and things on. And so I remember doing all of these things. And sometimes we would have races, between friends, or we'd play Red Rover. So this was the time that I really looked forward to in school. And although I love to learn, this was the time I looked forward to. And it wasn't because I was like super social and loved to just play with other friends. I wanted to move. I wanted to be free. And I could really recognize that now because I know what, I was inherently interested in, and it was movement. So what ended up happening is after a few years, we ended up moving to a whole nother city, a bigger city, where there was more opportunities for my family and my father and stuff to go to work. So we ended up moving over there. And when we moved over there, it was a big shift in that there was a change in the amount of play that I had access to. So where I lived prior to that, I think I described this in one of my first play videos. I lived in an area where literally you could just go outside and play for the day, and at the end of the day, you would just come home. So there was no fears of anybody getting kidnapped, anything strange. You just went outside and played, and other children did that as well. So you could play with other children. It was very free. And at school, it was a school that was a little bit more based in play. There was a lot more like uh, celebrations and things in the school. Like they had a fall festival, they had Christmas stuff. They did a lot of activities, and they also encouraged a lot of play. So if the students were doing good, like at the end of the month, they would have this day of play, and a whole Friday would kind of be like your play day, and a lot of it would be outdoors. And then, they maintained their recess and stuff like that. At lunch, after lunch, you got to go outside and play. So it was a school that was run pretty normally, really. But once that we moved to this bigger city, that changed. For one, we weren't really allowed to just go outside and play because it was a new, bigger city and we didn't know everybody and things like that. So I wasn't just going outside and playing. And even if I could, I probably wouldn't just because of the safety of it. I didn't know the area, I didn't know the people. So I didn't really have that freedom like I felt before at my previous home where, I knew it and it was safe to me and I knew what to expect and what was happening. So it was completely, I felt secure. Where now everything had been flipped upside down and it didn't feel so secure. I didn't really know, and I didn't have the freedom of play to kind of balance all that out. So a lot had been lost. And so the same thing went for in the school. Strangely, they just didn't do recess at these schools. They just didn't do that anymore. So instead of doing recess, they would maybe have like an exercise class or something in the gym, and that counted as your outdoor time. So I completely lost recess in going to this new school. And so that was in itself just really hard for me to, be happy at school, even though I like to learn. And so that's what this can do is when you don't have just a little bit of play mixed in there, even things that you like and can be good for you don't want to do anymore. So there has to be some element of fun or play in everything, even in relationships, like with your romantic partner or, your family. All of this has to have a little bit of an element of play in it. Or else, really, what ends up happening and what feels like is happening is that love is dying, is what it feels like. That's not what's really happening, but it feels that way. And so that can be really detrimental to relationships and to the person's mental health, stability, and security in life. So, play is actually very essential. It's an ingredient that needs to be sprinkled really into anything. The workplace, everywhere. You have to sprinkle a little bit of that into it. So that began to happen for me. That when I was separated from play, I really noticed a level of kind of dissatisfaction that ended up happening. And so, as I grew older, I went into high school. Things I started to get older at that age. So my needs for play shifted a little bit more. And so into more like a different kind of play. Because as you get older, play isn't necessarily always just jumping outside in movement like we're talking about with movement. It could be playing with words, it could be playing, within a relationship, could be like little teasing. It doesn't have to be full on movement. But it's good to incorporate movement throughout your life, regardless of this, because it's healthy for the mind and the body. So there was a time also in my life later as I got older that I stopped incorporating movement. I always was a person that was involved in like dance and I did color guard, which is flags and things and dance and all of this in high school. So I was very much into movement and theater and music, moving my body and stuff like that was okay for me. It was didn't come extremely natural to me, but I definitely enjoyed doing it, whether or not I was doing it like perfectly. That didn't really matter to me. So as I got older, I actually did lose some of that because of work and, family and stuff like that, not really having a whole lot of time. Because after you have a child, really any free time you have, you want to spend with your child, especially if you're working. So if I'm working, I'm spending the majority of time with my child. And in that play, was more of a different kind of play with my child. And I didn't really have the larger movement like exercise or dance. I was moving, but a little bit smaller as I was playing with my younger child. So as I got older, like I say, I wasn't exercising, I wasn't moving. And I began to kind of gain weight and things like that. And then I had a wake up call. I had a health scare. And at that point, I started to just basically try to reintegrate myself back into exercising, dance, yoga, the things that I used to like to do. And so I started off very slowly with just walking 30 minutes a day. And that was from not doing anything at that time. And so just from walking 30 minutes a day, my blood pressure went down to pretty much normal. I was able to get off medications at that time, and I had a real bad problem at that time. I was also able to lose a lot of weight, at least 30 to 40 pounds. And I got back to like my weight of what I was in high school or even less than that. And that was all just from 30 minutes of walking per day. That's all it took. I didn't have to lift a ton of weights or join a CrossFit or, not that there's anything wrong with those things, but I didn't have to exert that much energy like we think when we think about losing weight or getting healthy. It was very simple. So that's all I had to do, and all of that fixed itself. And then from there, my desire of movement grew. Now I wanted to get back into yoga, so I started to do a few yoga classes. Then I wanted to get back into dance, so I started doing a few dance classes. So, just even if you're not moving right now, just getting a little bit of movement in will spark things for you. And you begin to see like changes in your mental health. You'll begin to see changes in your physical health. You'll be able to see changes in your emotions and moods, and your overall energy levels. And you might notice physical changes, right? So all of these things will kind of begin to work, and it just takes walking, guys. I'm really just, that's all I really did. And from there, everything changed. And the biggest change I had, and the largest, long term change I had, has come from walking. So that's still something I still do. And, even whenever I travel or things like that, I try to make sure that I'm walking. So it's just a very basic and easy practice to do. If you do it in nature, that's even better. But if you can't, you do it on the treadmill or something like that, that's fine too. So any kind of movement is good. But as you begin to expand more into, now you're walking and now you have this desire to do yoga, it begins to stretch your muscles. You begin to become more flexible. And that flexibility is not just in your body, it's actually in your mind as well. It's becoming flexible everywhere. So you'll notice that with people that are very rigid or, are very closed off in life, they're actually very stiff and they actually don't move very much. And I've noticed the difference within myself. When I'm more open and more flexible, I'm more engaged in movement. So I did a poll. I've done a couple polls on my community tab on YouTube, just kind of asking, do you dance? Do you exercise on a regular basis? And like kind of giving different time frames. Do you exercise daily, once a week, monthly, or hardly ever? Stuff like that. And so I got kind of mixed responses. I got about 50-50, it looks like. So there's people that do and people that don't. And, that's just very telling of how things are, because that's usually how a lot of things are. Some people exercise, some people don't. It's kind of in half. And we see, even everybody's kind of divided in that way too. Just in the world, everything's kind of split right now, almost halfway with everything, with beliefs, with everything. So that's interesting to see that as well. But just movement in itself is just part of life. We have to move. If we stop moving, our joints suffer, we begin to lose muscles, all of these things, we begin to deteriorate. And so we don't want to deteriorate necessarily, because, that kind of signals the end of things. So life is always in movement. Life is impermanent. Life never stays the same. And our true nature is very youthful, playful, and young. So if we can incorporate some of that movement, I'd really encourage you, if you're not moving now, to incorporate something as simple as walking. And from there, maybe dancing. Actually, I haven't danced in a long time. I dance off and on. I kind of oscillate between this kind of thing of dancing and not dancing. Well, I kind of use it more of an exercise now. So that's the way I see it. And it's kind of okay for now. So what I do is and I have to link it down below because I cannot think of the name of the channel off the top of my head. But it is an amazing channel. There's a woman on YouTube and she does dance. She does dance videos to loosen like your hips. And it's a lot of dancing with your hips, stuff like that, but she does it to release anxiety, things like that. And I will tell you guys, this exercise is amazing. And it's like it's just, it really opens you up. And if you're new to dancing, it's so positive, so uplifting, the way that she speaks to you, the way that she shows you how to move, the type of movements. If you were just to watch it, you'd be like, wow, I can't do that. But once you start doing it, it's almost completely natural. It's almost like you've done it before, which kind of brings me to my next topic of, for centuries and for pretty much most of human existence, dance has been part of traditions, has been part of our history, and has been part of celebrations, has been part of rituals, has been part of many things of actual significance to humans. It's just up until very recently that we are now using dance as just like exercise or, recreation. Prior to that, it was a very important and sacred part of humanity. And it was a part of life that was important, especially for women to dance, was a part of them showing and showcasing their femininity, which is part of what a woman is. We are pretty much the divine expression of femininity. And so we have to express that in some way, and it comes naturally for us to express it. But a lot of times that's repressed today because there's no time for that. A lot of women today are working full-time jobs and also have families and husbands and extracurricular activities and things that they get involved in and do, and there's just not time for these ceremonies of dance unless you're involved in a religion or a culture that does that. So we're kind of becoming disconnected from a part of us that is very important to be expressed, because it's part of this expression that we are. It's part of what we are. We can look back at many different, like I say, traditions, religions, all of this, and find a dance somewhere in there, and dance or movement, whether that's chants and dancing at the same time. Even men were very much involved in stuff like that. We can think about Native American communities. We can think about any community, really. They all have that element to them. And so some of those that do not, they're a little different, but in most human cultures up until recently, that's what we see. So to lose that now, what is that going to do for people? What is going to happen with people that are so disconnected from something that is so natural to the human? So it's just something to kind of ponder about. And I would just encourage you to just kind of reconnect with movement in some way, whether that's running, walking, jogging, martial arts, dancing, yoga, pantomime, whatever, sign language, just some sort of movement. You know what is really nice if you're not really into movement or haven't done it in a while is interpretive dance. Even when no one is around, play some music and just allow your body to flow with whatever the music is doing, and just allow your body to feel it, because when you are doing that, you're actually working with your body a lot more. You're allowing it to also tap into its intuitive nature of tuning into that sound, that feeling, that vibe, and allowing it to work through your body, which is what is happening all day long in life. This is what's happening. And so that's just one good place to start. So I kind of wanted to open this up, kind of open up this shell of movement and play to kind of lead into our next subject, which is going to be around communication. And so we're starting off with movement, because movement is kind of just the basic of it. It even happens prior to communication. So movement and all of that is happening prior to communication. We can even move with our hands to explain stuff. We can talk with our hands and people can understand us. The next time we're going to be talking about the spoken word and the playful words that we can use and play in communication and how that happens. So check back with me next time. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you have any ideas for playful movement or any maybe channels that you'd like to recommend for any exercises or playful movements that maybe you know about, please comment down below. Please share with us. We really would love to hear that. Thanks again, and please come back. Thanks for watching.